there are 2 points which I want to tell you. First is that your logic that if God exists, we should believe in His word and see reality through His eyes. But that still requires that you prove the existence of God, and God created the man. So your logical conclusion is right, but you haven't yet proven the truthfulness of the premise, as that God exists and He created us, right? So there's no proof for that to get to the final conclusion. The next thing is that you said.
Okay. Because I was drinking. Could you just?
No, let you speak.
No, could you say that again? I need to hear you out.
So your logic chain was correct, saying that if God created us, we should see.
No, I didn't say if. I said God did.
Yeah, but that's one of your premises to get to a conclusion. But you have to still prove the premise. Which, personally, as an atheist, that's why I am an atheist, because there hasn't been enough proof for me to believe in the existence of God that created me and gave me the reason that you are arguing about. The second moment I want to point out,
one thing at a time. I'm going to forget otherwise.
Okay, I'll let you do that.
One thing at a time. You speak about proof.
Yeah.
I just gave you a concept, which is the origin of reason.
Pass the shovel to him. He's starting to dig his hole now.
I just gave you an explanation of the origin of reason in terms of theism.
Yeah.
And what I did is I not only gave an explanation of the origin of reason according to theism, I also said it is impossible from an atheistic perspective to have an explanation for the origin of reason. Now you say proof, right? How can you use a term like proof when the term proof assumes rationality? Rationality doesn't make sense unless God exists. So the only thing that you have is this. You only have two possibilities right now. You can either say, yes, rationality does exist, the origin of reason does exist, and it's because of God. Or two, you can say it doesn't exist, and this argument doesn't make sense, but then the word proof is meaningless.
But then you're saying that I, as an atheist, I cannot reason just because I don't believe in God. But what is reason? Like the understanding of the consequences of the action? Is this like reasoning? Would that be considered reasoning? That you understand the consequences of your action. That is the basic factor for me.
That is one process of reason. Yeah.
And why is
But what I'm saying is this. Look, let's just boil down to this, right? When people say, "Look, I'm an atheist. I need evidence. I need proof," but for them to ask proof, they're using their reason.
Yeah.
They're using their rationality, and they cannot account for their rationality except by God.
That is fine.
So what they're actually doing is this. They're asking for evidence, but them asking for evidence is evidence for the existence of God, but they don't realize it.
No, you're going in a kind of a circular type of argument. That it does like.
Okay, let me make it clear for you. I'm going to put it in another way, which is this: no God, no reason to trust your reason.
Okay, so
that's basically another way of saying what I just said.
So you're saying,
which is what I'm saying right now is exactly what people, atheist philosophers of science, when they speak about the origin of reason, this is what they're actually referring to. If naturalism is all that we actually have, we can't trust our reasoning capabilities. We have no explanation for it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you have to put God as an explanation for
okay,
it.
But you've got two choices, yes or no. Either our reasoning abilities are trustworthy. No, if no is the case, everything we're saying is gibberish. If yes is the case, then the only explanation is a non-naturalistic one. So between these two, you've got two choices. You can either go with theism, or you can become a hypocritical atheist pretending to use reason but not counting for it.
No, you see, not following this part. If you're saying, if we ought to trust our reason, we ought to believe there's God. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying not using your reason, because you can use your reason and be an atheist, a deist, a Hindu, a Taoist, whatever. That's irrelevant. The origin of reason, the explanation of this trait which distinguishes us from the animal world, The other animals can use reason, but our ability to go to space, to do quantum mechanics, to do all these things, this amazing quality that we actually have, which is far beyond what survival and reproduction requires. Survival and reproduction, just eat and mate, eat and mate, eat and mate. That's all it is. But we know as human beings, some of the most smartest human beings, they didn't use their reasoning abilities to survive and reproduce, such as even Richard Dawkins. Now, Richard Dawkins is supposed to be a clever guy. Atheists love him. How many children does he have? One, from one wife. But that doesn't make sense from a Darwinian point of view. He should be bonking women all the time. If someone asks you, how many children do you have? I lost count. That is what Darwinian prediction would show. Yet, he spends a lot of his time writing books against religion, but his writing of books against religion makes no sense from a Darwinian point of view.
Okay, no, I understand what you're saying.
Do you understand?
I understand what you're saying, but well, it still fits in my model of how we evolve as a species, as a society. Of course, but well, it is. I think what I'm trying to say is, I think a society and a human being and a family, like if you're thinking just in terms of evolution, Darwinism, and survival, has a higher chance of surviving if they actually explore, reason, think more than chimps or other animals did. And it makes perfect sense in this model.
Now, here's why it doesn't make sense within the model. And this is not according to me, this is according to mainstream evolutionary secular biologists. It doesn't make sense because, one, we have reasoning abilities which far exceed the requirements of survival and reproduction. Two, we have natural selection which is blind to anything which is true or false. Natural selection only sees that which gives it reproductive or survival value. This is why natural selection cannot distinguish between a true belief and a false belief. Even Steven Pinker, an evolutionary psychologist, he is probably the most well-known evolutionary psychologist in the world. He admits that natural selection has geared us for survival, not for truth. And reasoning is about arriving at that which is true, not that which helps you survive.
It's still, I don't see why this doesn't fit.
Okay, do you know what? Here's what I recommend you do. Put together a little synopsis. Say, can Darwinian evolution explain the origin of reason? Get it peer-reviewed, get it published, you will become a billionaire. This is big business. And the people who are involved, the people who are at the top, they agree. Even Darwin, like I said, he said, would I trust the convictions of a monkey's mind? No. So how can I trust a mind which evolved like that? So all that you actually have as an atheist is this. You have the claim of using your reason, but the only way of accounting for that is the very thing which you claim against and you define yourself against, which is theism.
It's again a circular type of thinking, but again, the fact that we don't yet understand
how is it circular? What I'm saying to you is exactly what evolutionary psychologists say.
But that doesn't.
So why are they doing circular reasoning? Not me. Why are they doing circular reasoning?
The only thing they are saying is that they just haven't found a way to show how this happened.
They're not saying we haven't found a way. They're saying we have found that natural selection only accounts for survival, not truth. They're not making a claim of ignorance. They're making a claim of knowledge.
Okay, I will stop at this point because that's my limitation of my knowledge. But I'll have to go back.
Evolutionary psychology. Do you know what? There's a really, really important, I would say, what Darwin got wrong, right? No, getting Darwin wrong, right? It's a book on psychology, and it speaks about, evolutionary psychology, disagreements with Steven Pinker, a new approach. It's got all of this stuff, right? all of this field is got loads of vibrant people disagreeing with each other, but something that nobody disagrees with within the field is currently, as it stands, unless there is a revolution in the way that we think about biodiversity, we actually get rid of Darwin, which we get rid of Darwin, we get rid of Darwinism, and we replace it with maybe a complete alternative. There is no explanation for the origin of reason.
So your choice is to put God in it.
No, my choice is this. There's two different things here. There is an explanation of the origin of reason from a philosophical point of view, in which I would say, yes, God is the best explanation. From a scientific point of view, I would take methodological naturalism and I'll say, go as far as you can. Look, don't think that religious people are anti-science. Right?
I'm not saying
right?
that. I'm saying
it's not. It's not as simple as, you know, somebody's writing a mathematical formula on the board, and in between I rub off some of it and I just write God. It doesn't work like that. We don't believe in God of the gaps. We believe you take science as far as it goes, but we believe fundamentally science can explain how nature works, but why nature exists is a metaphysical question. And it's outside of the realm of science.
It's fine if you...
Ta-da!
But we didn't have any...
So we didn't disagree much.
No, it's not that we didn't disagree. I actually think we quite disagree on some.
No, we disagree on theology, but we can't disagree that currently, as it stands, there's no explanation for the origin of reason.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I'm fine with it, and I'll just wait for another 50, 100 years or whatever there is to wait for the answer.
But the thing is this: there's two different things here. There is a scope. So science is based upon mathematics and logic, right? Now, science cannot give you an explanation of mathematics. You need pure logic for that, right?
Okay.
Science is based upon logic and based upon maths. So you can't use science to explain the thing that is based upon. The origin of reason is a foundational problem, and from that you get the scientific method. So in the same way that science cannot explain its foundations, science cannot explain the origin of reason in a naturalistic point of view, unless you basically say, what we're going to do is we're going to take a anti-realist approach to science and say it only gives you workable models, and say this is the best workable model that we actually have. But you can't say it's true, you can just say it's workable model.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's how we get to some models indeed that describe the reality. It's just, for me, as an atheist, it just baffles me, why would I include in this model something that I have no proof of?
We don't
proof or evidence of.
We don't include God within the equations of science. God is the one who gave us the ability to reason. God is the one who gave us the Quran. He's the one who gave us the guy who's a Quranic scholar who came up with a scientific method. Science is a way of discovering knowledge about how the world works. We don't go within the equations of science or the sentences of science and rub out a few things and write God. We don't do that. We stay outside of that. We understand that science is an application of reason to the natural world. We go wherever science actually goes. Now, what we're actually speaking about when it comes to atheism or theism is not science. We're speaking about metaphysics, which is a different thing.
But now, the thing is that very so often religious people or theists or even books of religion claim to know how things work. They give a model of how things work or show it. And then you had this rebuttal to Rob saying, we had smart people 1,000 years ago, and you can't say, that they were super people. No, they were smart people, but their model was based on something that, it was based on putting God in many instances, saying, we're sick because I'm sinful.
No, but not everybody did that. And the people who what they actually did is they didn't make they didn't distinguish between science, well, there was no science then, but the natural world, and metaphysics.
Yes.
So it all became kind of like, cause and effect. Is there even such a thing as cause and effect? Or is it that in between an angel comes or something like this, right? So I would say these are people who got their wires mixed up. They confused, they started adding God into areas where the explanation of God is an explanation which is not in contradiction with a naturalistic explanation. So I'm just going to give you something, right? So in the Quran, in chapter 67, which is the Darwinian, it gives an example of this sort of relationship. Now what it basically says is this. We just bring up 67. It says, God says, do you not see the birds up in the sky, flapping their wings? None holds them up except God. Now this verse has two types of explanation. It has a mechanical explanation and it has a metaphysical explanation. Surah Mulk.
Yeah.
Where's the verse on the bird? It's near the beginning. So it's giving you two types of explanation. So I, as a Muslim, the way I approach science is this. I approach science not as something which should take somebody away from God, which is something which really annoys me when people try to use science as a tool to get people away from God. Science is a way of worship for me, because discovering about the world, understanding about the beauty of the world is something which should bring us closer to God rather than further away from God. Just recently I was reading about a beetle, and this beetle actually has these two liquids. It's called the bombardier beetle, right? It's got these two liquids in its butt, whatever it is, right? Yeah. And what it does is it has this explosion chamber, it sticks them in there, an explosion happens, and boom, it attacks its opponent.
Yeah.
Now when I look at that, it reminds me of the creative power of God. Yet we have people today who, when you try to look at nature and try to remember God and think, look how amazing nature is, you have people who say, no, you can't do that because Darwin showed that there's no God, or Darwin showed that you can't reflect about nature in that way.
That's a silly argument.
That's a silly argument. That's all I'm arguing against.
Yeah. But the other thing is, what say Darwinist theory comes in is from ideas, say, in Christian, I don't know the Quran story, but in Christian religion, is that, a female came out from a rib of a man.
Yep.
So that sort of gives you a model of how things happened, which in that case, evolution says it's probably not, because the model that we have shows that it's highly unlikely, and the understanding we're having, and there's no proof to show that this has happened. Or let's say there's no any sort of evidence, like even
Okay.
that can show that.
Two different things
So
here,
that's
right?
what
Okay, two different things here. When it comes to the claims of science and what science can reach, and claims that we believe are from God, there's sometimes a clear discrepancy between the two. Now, when it comes to Darwinian evolution, theologically as Muslims, we know that it's based on a probabilistic framework with assumptions and disputes, but let's leave that aside. Theologically, where is the contradiction? You could say when it comes to human ancestry there is, but in regards to the rest of nature, the Quran is silent. But what we have to understand is when we use science to come to a particular conclusion, that conclusion may contradict a conclusion that is in the Quran, or something else that we derive from another field, maybe in something else. Now, just because there's a contradiction doesn't mean you say, right, this is wrong and this is right, or this is right and this is wrong, or both are wrong, or whatever. You can actually take an epistemic approach and say, well, science gives you workable models, and which are then falsified, and science is progressing and is changing over time. And we even have the case just about 70 years ago where there was a direct contradiction between science and the Quran. All the scientists in the world believed in some sort of eternal universe, steady state model or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They believed in something like this. Einstein included it within his theory of relativity. Now, that contradicts the Quran, because the Quran says the universe has a beginning. Now, if I was a Muslim alive during the time of Einstein, I wouldn't go around challenging every single physicist. I would say, well, that's your science. you have a workable model, and that can change. Now we have Big Bang cosmology, which is in line with the Quran. Tomorrow, in 50 years' time, they could go back to the steady state model. So just because there's a contradiction between science and the Quran doesn't mean the Quran is wrong. Secondly, even today in physics, we have general relativity, which is a really amazing model, lots of predictive power, and quantum mechanics, which is also very successful.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, both contradict each other. Yet scientists don't say, I'm going to reject general relativity and I'm going to go with quantum mechanics. Or they don't say, I'm going to go with quantum mechanics and reject general relativity. They say, let's see where both these horses go.
I'm
So
not
there's nothing
sure
wrong.
They contradict each other.
Well, they do, fundamentally. Which is why they're trying to come up with the theory of quantum gravity. They're trying to make up some sort of a synthesis, right? Science can only give you workable models, which can then be falsified.
So
that's all it can give you.
So now my question would be, like, why me, or why would anyone, say, leave a book or a creator as the model for their, for their
Worldview.
Worldview, yes.
Okay, the thing what you have to do is, you have to first go back to the belief in God. Because without the belief in God, no claim makes sense from that perspective. So the question fundamentally is this: is there a God? For me, I would say God is a self-evident reality. God is not something which needs evidence. I have the concept of right and wrong within me. Right and wrong is not within a test tube. I don't have to measure it. You can't get a pH level of right and wrong. It's something within the human being, it's innate. So belief in God is a self-evident reality. It is true. Now, if I say come across someone who doesn't believe in God, I would simply say is this: the Quran tells us every single human being has an innate belief in God, which is sometimes covered by societal pressures and philosophies and ideas. And this the Quran refers to as the fitra, the natural state that the human being is in. And what the Quran says is, when the human being, even if the human being is a disbeliever, when they get into trouble, and the Quran gives the example of being on a ship, and when you're on a ship and it's about to sink and there's waves and waves and waves coming, what happens? People turn to God. Save us from this and we will be grateful. That's what it says in the Quran. So the fitra, which is the natural state that you're in, it can come out in two ways. When we use logic and reason, it can uncover the fitra. When you have a spiritual experience, the fitra is uncovered. So what I would say is it's horses for courses. Some people are very spiritual, some people are very logical. So maybe you're more of a spiritual person. Maybe you need to have a spiritual experience to have an awakening. I would ask you, go home tonight, bow down to God, and ask God to guide you. Because the Quran says, whoever God guides, no one can misguide.
Well,
so spiritual.
I have been doing that for a Christian God, but
look, there's no such thing as a Christian God. There's God.
But look.
Christians, Muslims, Jews believe in the same God. All you need to do is this: don't say, I'm asking the Christian God. Say, I am asking God. And I believe Hamza, you're telling me about your story. He used to pray to just God, and God guides. And look, he's got a beautiful beard now.
And it's fine if you have this spirituality idea. There's
all humans crave spirituality.
Let's say, yeah. But then it has very much more implications when you're saying there's an existence of God, he set up these rules, and we gotta abide by them. It has way more implications for the people around me when there's someone coming with these claims, rather than saying, there might be a God. I have no clue where is he. I have no idea what is he doing. I don't know if he cares about me. He might have created the universe. Well, I have no idea. I'm just gonna live.
Yeah, but here's the problem you have, you see.
I'm running out of my voice, so he's gonna.